God have mercy on us all.
Did I screw that up?
And you can get Listen Up for only $14.99.
Oh, we're rolling whenever we're ready.
Roll.
So great. So we're at annual conference, the Texas annual conference.
Let's go! Yeehaw.
Yeah. And for people who don't know, the annual conference meets every year.
Does it?
Well, it's called annual. And it's kind of like a business
those
meeting.
of you who don't know.
I hate to admit this, but last night was the opening worship session. And
How was that,
now
John?
that Melissa Maher, who's joining us today, and Gregg Taylor, down from the great north,
Tundra.
Minneapolis, we're going to hear about your snowblower machine.
Oh, I can talk about
but,
that.
last night, opening session, I have to admit, I was at dinner with my wife and my mother.
It was fire.
And it was good. I have
truly-
no doubt it was good. But my mother,
Truly.
I pulled up at like 8:30, and we're like still doing communion. She goes, "What are you watching?" I said, "This annual conference." She goes, "Aren't you like sick and tired of like Methodist stuff?" I was like, "Well, this is good. The worship's good." I said, "Some of the other stuff, not so much." But over here, it's good. It's good to be good.
It's good
We
to
have
be-
positive attitude.
It's good to be a Methodist, too.
No, to be United Methodist, the spirit in the room. So we do have Melissa Maher
United
joining
Methodist.
And
Matt
can
and
it
I.
be?
Melissa, of course, as you know, was a pastor at Mercy Street. She's been on Chapelwood staff for a long time, and she has moved and transitioned into conference director of now connectional. You have had like 2 jobs now since you.
That's-
What happened is
welcome to ministry.
you like combine. They keep putting things on your plate. So tell everybody what it is that you do. And because I want to talk about, you do new churches and you also do this fresh expression stuff I want to hear about, which I think is exciting.
It is exciting. And as any institution right now, we're shrinking so that we can pay attention to the main thing. And so I'll be the director of the Center for Leadership Vitality.
Yes. I like that.
What I like about that is vitality is more than just kind of nose above the waterline. Like, what does it really mean to flourish? And we're trying to ask the question of what it means for communities to flourish, and then by way of that, congregations. And so I get to work very closely with our 300 congregations across the annual conference, from Texarkana all the way down to Galveston, all the way over to Bryan College Station.
If you follow Melissa on social media like Facebook, you'll get updates of all the places that you get to go and kind of your reflections.
My little Nissan Rogue, 20,000 miles this year. So it's good stuff.
So you're going to like not just new church starts. There have been some of those, but there's some revitalization, and you're also just going to churches that are still, I mean, maybe not new church start or revitalization, but they're just doing what they do. But what are some of like the highlights that you see out there that are exciting for you, that
Yeah.
give you hope?
The resiliency of the local church. So I think every church right now, we are all in a season of revitalization. The last many years have been a reckoning of kind of harm we have done to ourselves, but also just a changing landscape. And so we just need a completely different toolkit than what we have. What has not changed, what has been really cool to see, are our laity across the annual conference. The average age of our church planter is somewhere between 68 and 72.
There's hope.
So
I
post,
can do that.
that's what's up.
Yeah.
I'm going to retire
I'm
and
next.
go plant a church.
Yeah.
And so in some regards, like the church planting books of the 90s, I don't know that that was on the horizon, but these are folks not only post disaffiliation, but I think they're in this next stage and next season of life, and they're really asking themselves what matters. And they don't want to create something. Sometimes you hear, I want to create something that my grandchildren will come to. They're willing to give up what they have known in order to make space for what will be. And so small groups that meet in the parking lot of the Dollar General, and I said, well, how did you pick the Dollar General? Why that? Well, I've been serving at the food bank for a while, and I found out Dollar General is small enough that when their milk is about to go bad, they don't qualify to go to the food bank for pickup. So we now have 16 locations across our community where we just meet for our small group at the Dollar General, and we take the gallons of milk to the schools or the school counselors. And reading the Bible. So the creativity, which is not like fresh expressions, new and flashy and strategy. It's a different skill set and toolkit. I think we're just falling in love again with our first love. That God is the one that woke us up, that put life in us. I mean, that is probably the greatest gift that week after week the community of Mercy Street gave me.
Yeah.
I didn't have to wait for Easter to think about resurrection. I just saw it walk through the door.
Yeah.
And at Chapelwood, too.
Yeah.
I mean, that we talk about grace. So I think what the laity are doing, particularly laity who are retired and are now really thinking about this next stage of life, and they want to be a part of pioneering what will be.
It's interesting. I mean, we're in an age. Gregg Taylor's with us. Gregg was pastor at Mercy Street 142 years ago.
Yep.
And now you're serving in Minneapolis. Tell us a little bit about kind of where you are and how many horsepower your snowblower has.
Oh, okay. Yeah, we moved to Minneapolis in May of 20. Well, actually, we moved in July of 2020. I started in May of 2020, and I mean, just in terms of the winters, I was telling Melissa earlier. I think it's four winters now, and so we
You don't count years, you count winters.
We count the winters. Yeah, it's. I mean, even now in the spring. You know, there's this sort of recurring thought in everybody's head: winter is coming. Winter is coming.
Game of Thrones.
Game of Thrones. Yeah. So, so that when we first got there, Amy, my wife, you know, she got all kinds of advice about the types of kind of clothing we should get. So she went to Costco, and she just bought all kinds of stuff. She even bought these little clip-ons that you put on your shoes that are little. They got little spikes in them, so that you can put it. So when you walk down the driveway or along the sidewalk, you know, when it's icy, it digs in, like crampons, you know, that kind of thing. And so, but most of that stuff we've never used. It's just like piled up. And but I have learned to appreciate base layers. Base layers are really important to keep your, you know,
We don't even know what that
warm,
means in Houston.
you know,
I don't know
and
what base layer is.
So yeah, but it's been a bit of a not this last winter, but the winter before last in 22, we had 95 inches of snow. That's like what? Do the math.
That's a lot.
9 feet, almost not. And
That's a lot.
Yeah, and so when we first moved to Minneapolis, I was kind of enjoying snow plowing. So I got a big snow plower with a big, you know, shovel on it, and it's got this troll on it. It blows snow everywhere. It's kind of satisfying because you can, you know, plow your driveway and you can see your accomplishment, and you know, you feel like you've done something until the next night when it snows again. And but so in April of 23, we got all this snow on top of the 90 inches that we already had, and I'm out there shoveling and snow blowing, and I thought, how do people live here? You know,
My God, why have you forsaken me?
Where are we? It's April. This is inhumane.
Yeah.
This is not right. And
Well, so how is the church, United Methodist Church? I mean, when you see up in Minnesota.
Yeah, sure.
Minnesota.
How are things? I mean, we kind of are so focused on our local areas, right? Like for me, it's been in a lot of Southeast or Houston. It's kind of my world. How are things going up there?
Yeah, so the annual conference, probably like a lot of annual conferences, is trying to figure out, because of all the disaffiliations, you know, 25% of churches nationally, I think, disaffiliated, and I think it's probably less in the Minnesota annual conference than here. But even there, it's, you know, kind of a stripped down approach and trying to reevaluate, trying to look at a budget from you know, a zero balanced budget, and to look at how do we continue to do ministry across Minnesota and actually the Dakotas with fewer dollars, fewer churches, and yet you know, a lot of need. And so the whole process has been, they've been in a multi-year process, really, of trying to figure all that out. They're still trying to do that. Apportionment dollars shrinking, and then, how many conference staff do you maintain? And then to redirect conference staff, probably like what Melissa, you're doing. Now you've got 3 jobs, right? And but to pull all that together in a way that's meaningful, makes meaningful ministry for the people in the area. So it's a challenge, right? I mean, it's for the annual conference, but we've got really good leadership, and I think it's they're figuring it out on the local level. I mean, in terms of the local church level, I mean, where ministry really happens, right? There seems to be a real vitality there, since the everything closed, and then the vote, right, at General Conference has really invigorated congregations, and so we're seeing a lot of folks come to Park Avenue Church and joining the church who now feel like it's okay, right? It's okay that, this church, the local church in terms of Park Avenue was always, we're welcoming and affirming of our LGBTQ siblings, and so, but now that the denomination has done that, it's created this sense of freedom and permission and, grace, an expansion of grace from the institutional level. And so, and people pay attention to that. And so it's a beautiful thing to see. Yeah.
That's good. Melissa, talk a little bit, I know I'm rolling off of our conference leadership, but our conference applied for a grant, and you've been involved in that for some. It is related around these expressions in ministry, this new kind of way of thinking about doing ministry. Share just a bit about that, because it's from Lilly,
right?
Correct?
The Lilly Endowment. Gregg, along the lines of what you were saying, at a annual conference level, when I got the call a year ago to step out of local church and then step into a role within our connection in a different way, it was an opportunity for me to take the vows of my ordination seriously, but in a different way. My time at Mercy Street, my time at Chapelwood had prepared me well, because how do you have an abundance mindset in the midst of shrinking resources? And shrinking financial resources. So as the annual conference, just our budget, we committed from 2020 to 2024 to reduce it by a third, and I think we've reduced it by 40%, both staff and budget. But as we began to look at the work of revitalization and recognizing there were pieces within our apportionments and our budget that were more administrative, we said, look, we like local churches, we've got to figure out how to get creative and go after grants. And so the Lilly Endowment, I mean, thousands of churches and pastors are sustained because of their work. Those of us around the table have been impacted by those Lilly grants. And so we wrote a proposal that would take a look at what would be the markers that would determine if a community and thereby a congregation were thriving. How would you know it? And we borrowed from Harvard research that had been done around the Human Flourishing Project. We looked at a bunch of other really smart folks out there. But we also met with about 100 laity from across the annual conference. And we asked them, what is vitality, what does thriving look like? And from those conversations, we distilled these kind of 5 markers. And so we're calling it the Thrive Initiative. Lilly Endowment has given us a grant for 5 years, $1.25 million, which is amazing. Sounds like a lot. It's $250,000 a year. And it's all going to be put towards investing in cohort-based learning for congregations around these 5 markers. And they're this: clarity. Not certainty, but clarity. Do we have a clear understanding of what God and Spirit are doing in this moment? To think about our witness, and really that's beginning with some kind of introspection of repairing our public witness. Is not great. And And so not just to kind of say, oh, it hasn't been great and move on, but to really think kind of confessionally. Clarity of purpose. What is our witness? What is the hope of the gospel that we proclaim with our lives first, and then with our words second? Do we have an abundance mindset that God has provided everything we need? Are we in kinship and true relationship with one another? I think we discovered as a denomination, we talk about being connectional.
We weren't. No, that's... And I think that's one of the reasons why we lost as many churches as we did.
Absolutely.
Because one of the things I think, and not to take over your place, I want you to continue with this, but I looked at it, and I think a lot of people looked at it. It's one of the arguments that I think people who were leaving made is that we're not really connected. I mean, we're not, we send the money to the general conference or whatever up there. What comes back? I think there was a lot of truth to that.
Yeah, very much so. So clarity, witness, abundance, a sense of kinship, that we belong to one another. Not we United Methodists belong to one another, but human being to human being, we belong to one another. The image of God, the Christ in me greets the Christ in you. And then as a group sat around the table and talked about these markers, and I don't remember who it was, but several people said, what about joy? Like, you just know joy when you walk in a place. How do you measure joy? I don't know. Tonight, it's Monday night here at Annual Conference. We're going to do 50 little experiments of joy on Tuesday and Wednesday. We're going to give folks $10 and just say, dream about what it would mean to spread joy, maybe around this conference hall, but like, I would just love to see signs of joy up and down this Beltway feeder. Because United Methodists were excited. So those are not things that Lily handed to us. These were markers that we really wanted to focus on. And so we put that proposal together. We submitted it. We heard in September, October. But along the way, congregations and clergy, as they heard about it, they just started preaching on it. People started putting together, writing new liturgies and prayers of confession. And it was like the thing just began to breathe and evolve. And so last night, our bishop really said, these are going to be the things that are going to help reshape us as an annual conference.
I think the clarity is huge.
Yeah.
I mean, we've had, I say that, I mean, it's probably not fair for the senior pastor to say, we've done really well at that. That's kind of arrogant. But I think we have had clarity for a long time about the kind of church, which I think has helped us move through this.
Yes.
About, embodiment of grace was there before I showed up 10 years ago. I mean, that was a part of the Chapelwood DNA.
Yeah.
And it was a part of the Chapelwood DNA that gave birth to a place like Mercy Street. All three of you have been a significant part of the ministry of that unique thing that came out of the DNA of Chapelwood, which is embodiment of grace, embodiment of Jesus in the world.
Yeah, I think that's right. I think a lot of times we think of grace as an idea, but grace always has a story attached to it, and the story is always primary, right? And so grace isn't some like algorithm or something that you kind of define. It's always embedded in a place and a story. And I think that's one of the things we've gotten away from, that we're to be a people of grace, but we have a difficult time as United Methodists or maybe just church folks extending that and being that. Grace doesn't show up in church, it shows up in the world. And grace is meant for the world, not for the church. And so that we have to define grace for the church is a problem of discipleship and neighborliness. And I think most of the things that we do as a denomination often are really about trying to hold in our own power rather than saying, wait, I mean, grace is in the world. That's what it's intended for. How do we become neighbors with each other? And so, but I think you're right. I think the clarity that we've had, particularly, I mean, at Chapelwood has been a real gift for us because we haven't had to kind of create an us-them in order to see how many us's do we have versus thems.
Sunday I pulled from Eugene Peterson the Long Obedience, the Psalm of Ascent thing where he does and he talks about the question that we ask as Christians is not, am I going to be a part of the community of faith, how am I going to be a
Yes.
part of the community of faith? Because once you become
Yes.
a Christian, you are a member of the church, whether your name's on a roll or not, whether you show up on Sunday or not, you are a member of the church. It's not debatable. It's not up for a choice. It's just the way it works.
It's just,
It is just.
it's what I love about infant baptism.
Yes.
Is
Yes.
that God has already
Done. It's
claimed
done.
us all. We get to show up. Yeah, and I think clarity and grace is about telling the truth.
Yes.
And the truth sometimes is, I don't
Yeah.
know, I'm scared.
That thing is what's is coming out to me. We need to do a better job. Ted Campbell was talking to me a little while ago about this catechism type thing that we need to figure out how to do better. I so agree with that because, I'm just going to say as nice as I can, Baptism Sunday was this past week at Chapelwood. And I'm just so much more aware of, I always do the teaching moment before. What does this mean? And why we do it and some other Protestant churches don't do this. And I was looking at the website of a church that is no longer United Methodist, but used to be, about baptism. And it was like, well, if you make a decision to follow Christ, you can be baptized by immersion. We will allow other ones, but by immersion is the primary way we do it. If you're a child, you want to be baptized, you got to go through our class with your parent, so you can be baptized by immersion. And
This is
if
a disaffiliated
this is
church?
a Methodist church that's no longer United
Now
Methodist.
became
And if
Baptist.
it's an infant, we do offer dedication, or the last thing was infant baptism, But basically, it was kind of like, I said it to one of my friends. He's like, "That's like Piccadilly or Luby's." Like where you walk through the cafe and it's
custard.
like, I'll take dedication.
And a yeast
I want
roll.
to dedicate my baby.
With a side
I don't want the
of-
infant baptism.
Fried
I'd like
okra.
believer's
Just-
baptism.
Just give us a
with
moment.
little
You can't
infant
say those words and not let us go through the line.
I know it's
Fish
have
in the
Luann
shape of
platter.
a square.
The Luann platter, please.
But I mean,
Yeah.
it was
Luann.
just, I looked at this and I was like, we have not done a good job
Yeah.
teaching sacrament. I mean, I just like and to remind people who are seated in the pews that when you were celebrating this together, and this is to remind you when we baptize this infant who doesn't know a thing, doesn't believe a thing, doesn't even realize who they are. The parents are stepping in. This is true of you. You don't know everything. You don't understand God the way you should. And guess what? God keeps showing up for you.
Yeah.
And the catechism of grace, going back to what you were saying, Matt, we're talking a lot about fresh expressions. Nothing new under the sun. Ecclesiastes said it really clear. We've been talking in the church for a long time about how do we reach the nones, Nones. We're moving into a stage where, first of all, I think anyone that would not claim any sort of particular religious affiliation would not label themselves as a nun. They would label themselves as curious, as hopeful, as
Spiritual but not religious.
Yeah. And so the catechism of those who are outside the boundaries of the institution of church, where the Spirit is moving, they are teaching and restoring to us the understanding of the sacraments. And so fresh expressions is just showing up in places where we are aware of the bread of life that's been given to us, the living water. And it was like Philip when he climbed into the chariot, or Paul when he showed up beside the river, and Lydia and the women were there. Like, God's Spirit's already working in these places.
Do you think some of the issue with the church, even like right now, I think about the embodiment of grace, is that we've made discipleship into a mental thing, and so we have to figure it out. Where it seems like if we are people of Pentecost, the Holy Spirit shows up and does something, and then when we put language to it is what we call theology or whatever, right? And so, like, we have not taught our folks the. I think part of the catechism is how do you pay attention to what Spirit is doing? And so that we have to come up with a new thing called fresh expressions coming out of actually England.
Yeah.
And really what Rowan Williams was doing, 20 years ago, calling it that, to where because we have to continue to create new labels for something that we've never taught the church how to do, which is to pay attention to what the Spirit is doing in the world.
Yeah.
And so then we give a lot of money to do that. We have a whole new generation that says, this is what we're going to do. And it doesn't change anything because our catechism is all about our brains. Yeah. And we haven't taught folks how to observe and to follow Jesus because it might actually cost us something. And I don't think we want to pay that price.
Well, I want to give you guys a chance to eat lunch too. I'm nice
Appreciate
like
it.
that.
Thank you.
And I really appreciate you stopping by. It was just great. Praying for you, Melissa, and your new job. And well, it's not new. I mean, you're doing it, but you are taking on some new stuff because, like, one of the conference staff people is retiring, and you're kind of taking on a lot of that stuff. So
You got a
It'll be
double
good.
pay raise too, right? And when they add an extra whole
It'll be
job,
good.
right?
It'll be good.
You're-
It'll be good. It's
yeah,
so
you-
good to see you all, family, Chapelwood family.
she's just like cruising.
I'm glad
right
you're going to
through.
get to visit with Cesar. It's good.
Yeah. We're gonna
Smile
talk.
and nod.
And you, it's great
Yes.
seeing you. Thanks for just
Good
being
to
here.
see you too.
And how's Park Avenue?
Park Avenue's hopping, man. I mean, it's a great place to be. I mean, it is.
I was almost coming there a few years ago, and then General Conference got canceled. We were coming to Minneapolis.
Yeah, that's right. You were. That's right.
We were going to go to Minneapolis.
Yeah, it's been 4 years now at Park Avenue, and I think we talked about it on a podcast 4 years ago, right?
Yeah.
When I just got there and George Floyd is killed, and so there's
Yeah,
a lot
you-
of
days later.
Yeah, like 6 days later, and I'm still trying to find what key goes to what door, and all this. I mean, fires and gunfire and SWAT vehicles in our parking lot, and where we are now, of course, COVID and all that. I mean, it's good to see. You talk about this grace and embodiment. To see sort of it's different. It's different. Grace has there's a visceral component to it that you can't get virtually through Zoom and online, and we feel that. Right? Not that that's not important. But the visceralness of grace of flesh to flesh and eye to eye and hand. Something happens when people are together that does not happen when people are not together, and this grace that flows. And I have to just to say, so grateful for all of you around this table and for Chapelwood and Mercy Street. What taught me more and more, not just as I think you were alluding to, Matt and Melissa, was not just, and the catechism said, not just what we believe, but how we believe. How we do it, how we experience this, and in our walk. The what is, I guess it's important, but it's not the thing, right? And I learned that through you all, and just really grateful, to be a part of a community that's represented around this table, friendship, and larger community of Mercy Street and Chapelwood that has shaped me and continues to, and just really grateful. Yeah.
Well, when you hear those celebrations at Mercy Street, none of them are like, none of them are dogmatic expressions of belief. I'm thankful that I believe. They're all
That's so true, right?
experiential. How God has literally
Yeah.
like impacted my life. They're all like testimonial narrative of transformation. None of them are belief statements.
No.
Yeah. And it's the power of witness and just being able to tell the Jesus story without having it wrapped up in all the.
Well, thank you all for coming and
Stuff.
sitting in and being here for a few minutes. And
Thank you.
And make sure if you like Pod Have Mercy, make sure you share it, subscribe, and like with those that may find it interesting as well. And we'll come to Minneapolis in the summer. In the summer.
After April.
Yes, I'm not coming when there's 95 inches of snow. We're coming this summer when we can escape 100.
Come in the summer, yeah,
We'll
it's
come in the
nice.
summer.
It's
Well, we
nice.
sign off at the podcast just by saying our name and then closing out. So I'm John Stevens,
I'm Gregg Taylor.
I'm Matt Russell.
Melissa Maher.
and this is Pod Have Mercy.